the Bulk Report.
Tonight, Barnaby Joyce on the great melon mess. And more warnings of the housing crisis. Will Labor MPs now dump on the Labor Treasurer who helped cause it? And how Donald Trump sent journalists off on a decoy plane to dodge an Iranian assassination plot. And journalism lecturers, when you hear some of them, you won't be so surprised that so many young journalists are of the left. And plenty more, including Rowan Dean. But first, the problem with Anthony Albanese today is the same problem we saw, more seriously of course, after the Bondi massacre last year. Flat-footed, too slow to react until too late, too proud, too stubborn, or in this case, simply lacking class. Now, Albanese has had more than a month since he went on the Bush Deep podcast of a comedian to stop his boorish mockery of Japan's Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi and her melons from turning into a diplomatic and political nightmare. I actually warned then, a month ago, that, and I think I was the first to do so, that this could bite him in the backside if he did not fix it. But he wouldn't. He said nothing, which is a big mistake, because look now, it's become a political and diplomatic nightmare in 4 different ways. Let me count them. 1, by turning Takaichi's gift of a ceremonial melon into a sniggering joke about melons with hand gestures to suit, Albanese has turned himself into a joke, a national joke, a liar and a sexist.
The Japanese Prime Minister brought a melon. Got a couple of melons. Got a couple of melons. She brought 2, as you do.
Now, the second way he's hurt himself in the country and his party, the Labor women that Albanese has since sent out to defend him are trashing their own reputations, and they've got to know it. I mean, they are claiming that you didn't see what you just did, and they're looking like hypocrites. Albanese used to boast, oh, look, I've got 12 women in my cabinet. That's a majority of the cabinet. Women, a record, women power. But how can any of us ever treat these female ministers seriously after this? These supposed feminists, all now sent out to defend their male master's melons joke, and not one of them calling it out.
I completely disagree with that interpretation. It is 100% wrong.
The Liberals have absolutely lost the plot, trying to perpetuate this ridiculous thing.
The Prime Minister's been very clear.
There has been some significant mischaracterisations.
The remarks from the Prime Minister have been misinterpreted. He has enormous respect for women.
The PM appeared on a satirical podcast and there are people trying to blow that up.
There has been a sensationalised reporting.
Those opposite who've engaged, who are so desperate to score political points that they are confecting a diplomatic issue.
Hypocrites, ladies, every single one of you. Now, to the third way that Albanese has hurt himself, his party and his country, the federal police are now on the case after the Liberals at least asked them to check the potentially unauthorised leaking of a confidential note that Japan privately sent to Albanese saying, look, Takaichi knew he didn't mean ill with his joke, assuring him she wouldn't react, Now, I would bet my house that Albanese himself leaked that private note to defend himself, to imply, Japan didn't really care, much ado about nothing. And we're told a senior Japanese official has said now that they're surprised he did that. And didn't Albanese look shifty in Parliament today, refusing to say if he was the leak?
Can the Prime Minister assure the House that neither his office nor his department leaked official and private correspondence from the Government of Japan? And what steps has he taken to satisfy himself that this is the case?
I note that in a political stunt from the opposition, they have referred matters to the AFP. The AFP is, of course,
members on my left,
of course, completely independent of the government, and they'll undertake their work, and I'm confident about that.
He wouldn't say he had leaked it. He wouldn't say he hadn't. It's always the cover-up that gets you, isn't it? And now, because Albanese didn't act, he didn't apologise, even privately, to Takaichi. Kaboom! That bomb this week exploded in his face. A Takaichi confidant, a former ambassador to Australia, said Takaichi had never expected to be so casually mocked by Albanese. And now the news of his insult is all over Japan. Here are some of the news stories I've found. From the Asahi Shimbun, perhaps Japan's most serious newspaper, Australian Prime Minister allegedly made sexually suggestive remarks regarding melons gifted by Takaichi. From Fuji Television, a major private TV network, Australian Prime Minister's comment that Prime Minister Takaichi brought 2 melons sparks outrage. Sexual jokes betray the bond and insulting and thoughtless. From Gigi Press, a leading news agency, Prime Minister's remarks spark controversy over allegedly mocking the melons presented by Mr Takaichi. And so on and on. And that's the fourth way he's hurt us, of course. I mean, how does that now make Australia look to Japanese voters, to its business leaders, to its politicians, especially these days when Japan was already warning that Australia seemed an unreliable supplier of gas? And also now when you've got Albanese having skipped a dinner at Parliament House meant to mark the 50th anniversary of the Australia-Japan Friendship and Cooperation Treaty, skipped it and instead ducked into another room in Parliament at the very same time to go and have fun at a Spotify event. Now, that's the music streaming service, where he posed next to a Spotify starlet. How exciting. How tacky. How tacky is all of this? And you wondered, how did Les Patterson become our Prime Minister? Even down to clutching a whiskey glass while making jokes about a woman's melons. In Albanese's case, of that disastrous Bush Deep interview, where even the podcast title is a double entendre. And after all this, Albanese not even trying to fix the damage. Just trying to get away with telling you that, oh, you didn't see what you just did see. Just like he claimed you didn't see him actually falling off that stage. Now, memo to Albanese. Look, some people might believe you, but many don't. And they now include a lot of Japanese from their Prime Minister down. So even if you think you've done nothing wrong, there is plainly now something you must fix in our relations with our fourth biggest trading partner and fix with Japan's Prime Minister. Yet even today in Parliament, Albanese just could not say sorry.
Millions of Australians have now seen, with their own eyes, the Prime Minister's appalling behaviour on the Bush Deep podcast. Now he embarrasses all of us by refusing to apologise to the Prime Minister of Japan. Why won't the Prime Minister stop treating us like fools, man up and say sorry to the Prime Minister of Japan?
My office and my team have spent 4 years carefully rebuilding our relationships in the region. We take our relationship seriously, including our regular engagement with Japan.
No, you don't. Now, some will say that this is, mountain out of a molehill, but does Japan think that? Does its Prime Minister think that? Do the women in Albanese's cabinet who've trashed their reputations to protect him, do they think that? Sorry can be the hardest word, but even harder than that is what you can get when you don't say it. But, I've got to be honest here. One reason that there's now, belatedly in many cases, so much fuss about Albanese's melons joke is that I've got to say the whole thing is just funny as well. I mean, even the word melons is funny. And women especially seem to be enjoying putting the boot in and doing that, jiggly thing with their hands. Take One Nation leader Pauline Hanson today.
Right, OK, what's happened? Has the Prime Minister dropped dead or what? Over the melons. You know this? It's disgusting what he's done, and he cannot apologise, and that is not leadership. If you get it wrong, you call it out and you say, I got it wrong. And now he's gone on saying, oh, well, they're only cheap melons. They weren't even worthwhile putting in the pecuniary of interest. And then he said it was only 2 originally. We find out now it's been 4. He's lied, lied and lied.
Joining me is our regular commentator and One Nation MP, Barnaby Joyce, the former Deputy Prime Minister. Barnaby, great to see you again. You know, it's a great standard. You always ask, what would the other side have made of this if you had done what they have done? If Barnaby Joyce had done what Albanese did, what do you think those 12 women in Albanese's cabinet who are now covering up for him, being stumm, what would they say about you?
It would be catastrophic. They would be lined up on every media platform. They would be screaming for my resignation from Parliament. They would be on every social media influencer or whatever you want to call. I would be misogynist. I would be disgraceful. I'd be everything under the sun. But the way out of it is to be Anthony Albanese. I'm incredulous. What we had a man in his 60s with a T-shirt on, sitting behind a 3/4 drunk bottle of whiskey, with a lady dressed up like a elephant hunter, talking about, and the double entente, straight after saying he wanted to shag a woman, then saying, who was also famous, we also know that, and then saying that, you know, the melon issue, and then saying, no, I didn't do it. I mean, what alternate universe is the Prime Minister of Australia living in? He's made a fool of himself. He's made a fool of us. And now, where is the contrite Prime Minister coming up and saying, look, that was really foolish what I did. I'm really sorry. If I had my time again, I'd never have done it. Yes, I got carried away with myself, and I profusely apologise to the Prime Minister of Japan. I apologise to the people of Australia that I let you down as well doing that. But we don't get that. We just get this continual circus. Well, now he goes on to decide that he didn't do it. I mean, I don't know. Are we all living in an alternate universe? You didn't do it. I mean, mate, we watched you. I turned down the volume and it made perfect sense to me before I turned the volume up. It made perfect sense to me what you were saying. It's just I wished you hadn't said it. That's a big strategic partner in defence, 4th biggest economy in the world, the counterbalance to communist China, and you're making sort of puerile discussions on a puerile platform about a very dignified lady who is incredibly important to us.
I've got to say too, Barnaby, look, talk me through this, because I agree, you know, saying sorry would have been the quickest way out. That said, in politics, it does, you pay a price for saying sorry. They've got you on camera, they've got you on the record, it's an admitted fault, comes up in the campaign ads, etc., etc. Is saying sorry in politics actually so deadly that you don't dare say it?
Well, Peter Beattie didn't think so. I mean, he stayed Premier forever. He made an art form of saying sorry. He got it wrong.
Yep.
And I think, yes, you do pay a price. You pay a couple of bad days in the media. And, it might get brought up later on. But where we are now is vastly worse for the Prime Minister, because, I don't know what the group is of people who believe him, but I'd suggest it's small. And you're dead right. It's excruciating watching Tanya and Tanya Plibersek and Penny Wong and the whole coterie of other strong feminists going out and saying nothing to see here. It's just like the whole world's gone mad. And I tell you, there's one guy who is kind of happy about it, and his name is Mark Butler. I reckon he's pretty happy about it. Jim Chalmers probably not too bad, because they'll be all starting to circle now.
No, I would have thought Tony Burke. That's what mail I'm getting, but maybe you're right. I think Mark Butler's actually doing a good job, provided he backs his rhetoric with action. So we shall see in the Health Department, particularly with the NDIS.
I tell you, it might be.
Barnaby, I'm getting overwhelmed.
Mel Narcus down in South Australia, he'll be happy about it. Watch him.
Oh, he'd be seeing a chance. He'd be seeing a chance. Oh, no, I'm with you. But Barnaby, all these polls, it's just confusing. And I've got to say, I'm confused after our own News24 Pulse poll came out today. Surprised me. Last week, the Redbridge poll had One Nation as the most popular party, the coalition way behind. On Monday, Newspoll had One Nation tied with Labor, the coalition again, way behind. But today's News24 poll has One Nation in orange on the graphic, plummeting from 30% a month ago. We've got the different graphic. Anyway, 30% a month ago to just 24% now. 4 points behind Labor and just 2 ahead of the coalition that somehow soared from a catastrophic 17% a month ago to 22 now. Big changes. Like I say, surprised me. So I guess I'm going to have to wait until a new poll to see if there's a pattern. But what does your own polling suggest? Have you really lost a fifth of your vote in just a month?
No, we haven't. And what I'd suggest, first of all, it's hubris to decide that a poll is a vote. A poll is a poll that's taken on the issues of the day. I would say that there are basically three major parties. There's the Labor Party, One Nation and the Coalition. And within that block will be determined the future government of Australia. And that's what I take away from it. And it means that we have to do the very best job we can every day to show to the Australian people that even with the limited resources we have, merely 6 people in the parliament and only a handful of advisors, we have to match up to the Labor Party with its 480 advisors and the Coalition with its near 90 advisors. And we do a remarkably good job. So we're working as hard as we can.
Well, it makes it more agile, doesn't it?
Yeah, well,
it makes it more agile, Barnaby, because you can throw the Volks, the battered old Volkswagen from one side of the road to the other, whereas they're driving a great big bus full of people behind them, all, backseat driving. It's a little hard to be nimble then. But can I just ask you, before I run out of time, to another huge government bailout of a business using taxpayer money?
Tomago.
Tomorrow, the Albanese and New South Wales Labor governments, they're going to reportedly announce a $1 billion bailout of the Tomago aluminium smelter that's in the Hunter Valley in the Labor seat of Patterson, which Labor, by the way, not unrelated to this, could lose at the next election. And what's more, the 1,000-odd workforce heavily unionised, Barnaby, 1 union from the Labor right, 2 from the ruling Labor left, and they've put big pressure on Labor to cough up. Do you think those 2 factors, the marginal seat and the unions, helps to explain this massive bailout of a private business with public money?
Well, let's first of all say why it has to be bailed out, because Rio Tinto has done a greater assessment on Australia's energy policy than anybody else and has decided we are completely and utterly off our chops, and they are leaving because energy prices are ridiculous. So they know more about anybody or how your intermittent power of windmills and solar panels is going. You are deindustrialising this nation. You are making it weaker. Issue number 2, $1 billion won't do it. I want Tomago to survive, and $1 billion is a band-aid on an amputation. And unless you deal with the actual issue, which is energy prices, this is going to really be a slight reprieve before the ultimate finale, that energy prices have sent Tomago broke. Or not Tomago broke, but made it unviable. At Rio, it's not going broke. And the unions there, they've come out. Well, the unions, rather than fighting for a package, should be fighting for a package and to get rid of net zero, get rid of the Paris Agreement, get rid of this intermittent power swindle, get rid of the capacity investment schemes, and then Tomago will survive. But and get rid of the safeguard mechanism.
Yeah, don't forget.
Otherwise, it's ridiculous. You're paying money.
You're right.
That the government created.
But we've seen this.
How does that work?
Barnaby, how many smelters have already had their hand out and the others lining up, knowing that they've got the government over a barrel, right? I think this is about the fourth, I think, bailout. I mean, it's just too much. It's taxpayers' money. Barnaby Joyce, thank you so much for your time. After the break, the housing crisis just got worse. I mean, what will Labor MPs now do to Treasurer Jim Chalmers for getting this so wrong? Now, this housing crisis keeps getting worse. I know that house prices were too high, but falling this fast and by so much is dangerous. And the Reserve Bank yesterday said there's more to come. That's the wealth of 6 million Australians we're talking about. Now, one problem with this huge fall is that, as the Reserve Bank also said, it means fewer homes get built just when we need so many more of them. The profit to build them isn't quite there now. And look, today the Commonwealth Bank reported a 15% fall in loan applications since the May budget, when the Albanese government broke its promise and hit us with higher housing taxes. Joining me is the political panel, Cameron Milner, former Chief of Staff to Labor leader Bill Shorten, now Director of GXO Strategies, and Michael Costa, former New South Wales Labor Treasurer. Cameron, fewer houses being built when we need more, big fall in house prices. This is not what Treasurer Jim Chalmers promised with his budget.
No, it wasn't. And this Albanese government's putting the boot into homeowners. And anyone whose wealth is connected to a house or an apartment they own has seen it being absolutely trashed since budget night. That's what the CBA said. That's what Westpac said as well, Andrew. And the problem here is that the government's got $1 trillion worth of public debt and have smashed the house value of Australians by $1.2 trillion. $1.2 trillion has been lost because of Albanese's budget disaster for houses. So no, and to your point, it's mums and dads who are making houses for renters. The government isn't doing anywhere near enough lifting work in terms of building enough houses. It's mums and dads who are building rental properties across Australia and have done so, and they're getting, absolutely in the neck. And, and as I say, the government's taken a boot to homeowners.
Yeah, it's weird though, Michael. The way the government's answering this is just crazy. They're trying not to say that their policies have done much about to cause this, to interest rates, foreign uncertainty, etc. On the other hand, they're saying, but look, we are looking after first home buyers. Houses are cheaper. They can get into the market if they can actually find a house for sale now. What is this? Is this a terrible mistake? And no wonder they don't want to admit it. Or is this exactly what they planned? And why don't they admit it?
Well, Andrew, I don't think they planned this at all. And again, to me, it's more of, Baghdad Bob Chalmers trying to spin it to his desired narrative, given that it's blown up in his face. He went from saying that these changes in the budget, and let me say that some of them could have been implemented in a more sensible manner and would have, been better policy. They stuffed up the implementation of these policies, and we know that. But he's gone from saying that it have no effect. Remember the, $2 a week on rents and, a slowing growth of house prices over the forward estimates of around 2% a year, to saying that this was his desired effect. Now, he's in trouble when he's claiming the thing that blew up in his face is what he wanted to do and is trying to spin it that way. I mean, look, the rental market is the one that I'm really concerned about because, if you own a home, you can sort of ride out the cycle. But if you're in rental, and more people are in rentals, this is blown up right in their face. They went from $2 a week. I mean, the average Sydney rent's gone up $50 a week, not $2 a week. So, we've got real problems there. And the RBA's forecast yesterday, Andrew, blew all of the budget assumptions out of the water, every single one of them.
I think it's a real problem. Now, the government's saying these are short-term fluctuations, just ride it out for a few months and, she'll become good. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But given all this, Cameron, given all this turmoil and the, blown assumptions, are you picking up any concern in Labor, among Labor MPs, that Jim Chalmers' taxes are causing more pain than predicted and they're not happy? It's causing them a problem?
Oh, look, Chalmers has got a huge problem with Labor caucus, a huge problem. I mean, he promised them a budget of reform and it's been an absolute disaster. I mean, look at the member for Sturt only last week writing to her constituents saying Jim Chalmers got it wrong. I mean, she's a Labor backbencher and she's actually ratting Chalmers out. Chalmers has a huge problem. His credibility is shot from this budget, and I think his ambition to be Prime Minister of Australia is massively diminished, if not potentially tarnished forever in terms of what he's brought down in May this year.
What do you think, Michael? What does this mean for Chalmers' future? And he seemed to be a shoo-in to be the next leader. Now I wouldn't want to bet on that.
Well, I've never been a fan, as you know, Andrew, because I think that he really is not qualified for the job that he's doing. He just doesn't understand economic growth and the principles behind it. He's certainly good at spinning a line, or was initially in the position, but he's no longer seen as even being good at that. Look, I unfortunately, and your listeners and viewers are not going to like this, I think this just consolidates Albo's position. I just don't see any of the people that are around at the moment having any chance, given the factional structure, of knocking off Albo. I think he's there for as long as he wants to go. And, even those preferred Prime Minister polls would give him some sort of comfort against the rest. So I think he's there for the long haul. And
what about, Michael Cameron, what about Albanese's female ministers, all of them, having to defend his joke about Japan's Prime Minister? They cannot be happy to make fools of themselves like that for him.
Well, no, absolutely not. I mean, Albo's angels, they were all out there today. Albo's angels, weren't they? Defending the indefensible. I mean, the Prime Minister on that podcast looked like a sleazebag and a dirty old man, quite frankly. That's what he was. I mean, it was insulting and appalling as a joke. But not only that, I mean, the actual melon fruit gift was actually a high cultural value from Japan. What's missed in this, Andrew, is the fact that diplomatically, it's an absolute insult to say it was the worst possible gift he's ever received. I mean, in Japan, they're given as gifts of high value and meaning between friends. And that's what the Japanese Prime Minister was doing. So, no, I mean, not only does he look like a sleazebag, but he looks like a cultural and diplomatic ignoramus. I mean, that's the problem with Albo in terms of the whole Melongate situation.
Yeah, I've got to, in fairness, say, look, he was asked what was the worst gift you were ever given, and he actually produced this melons thing. But then he did say it ended up quite good. I don't know whether he just realised, I just stepped on a landmine. I do not know. Michael, I talked before about the Tomago deal to be announced tomorrow. $1 billion of taxpayers' money to save this smelter. I've worked it out. For every worker employed directly or indirectly, that is $200,000 per man or woman. That's huge money.
Well, Andrew, I think Barnaby Joyce was right on this. It's not that amount. It's much more than that. They're talking about, on energy, having a subsidy of anywhere between $300 million to $500 million a year. Now, that can't stop. That's the reality here, because aluminium is 40-50% electricity. So how are they going to stop that subsidy? So you can, quadruple that figure that you're talking about. I think that's $1 billion over 2 or 3 years and continue for the life of the smelter. Having said that, I mean, we do need these smelters. We need them as part of our defence industry program. We're trying to build submarines and ships and everything else, and we need aluminium. And, they've just created a disaster with their energy policy. And by the way, this is the reason why up here in the Hunter, people are flocking to One Nation. They're deindustrialising across the board. It's not just there, it's in the mines and everything else that's associated with the small businesses. So that's why you're seeing One Nation go up. But it's more than $1 billion, Andrew.
But Cameron, Labor is so disciplined. You saw it in the Victorian Parliament, right? Victorian Labor, where as soon as Jacinta Allen is blown out the door because the ratings are terrible and they've got to go to someone else because they're going to get slaughtered, and then suddenly, oh no, she was wrong in this, I wasn't part of that decision, it was all wrong, we're going to change everything, we're going to rethink working from home, we're going to rethink Royal Commission, we're going to do this all differently. Is behind the scenes, do you detect behind the scenes a sense that from Labor MPs that the government is completely on the wrong track?
Sorry, I think in Victoria, Ben Carroll's doing a really good job. So, I mean, I think he's actually given Labor a chance at the state election. Allen was gone for all money. Carroll will give them a chance. Federally, yes. I mean, I just come back from the UK and look, Andy Burnham's just replaced a sitting Prime Minister in Keir Starmer, who was elected on a massive majority, simply because at the end of the day, after 2 years in government, he didn't look like he had an answer to anything and no one liked him. The polls were terrible. And doesn't that sound familiar? I mean, Albo's in the same sort of doldrums. To your point before, Michael, I don't think the factions move against him, but the numbers certainly are.
Michael Costa, Cameron Milner, thank you very much to you both. After the break, the truth about that is Muslim prayer at the Bondi massacre site. I mean, how naive are Australians still after Bondi, especially if you're of the left? Now, at the end of the City to Surf run in Sydney last weekend, Sunday, this bloke, a Muslim, was pictured in his running gear with Free Palestine printed on it, praying apparently at the memorial to the Bondi dead, people killed by allegedly Islamist terrorists out to kill Jews. Now, you got a lot of people, quite naturally, particularly on social media, saying, well, how disrespectful was that? This was a power move, and you can guess the rest. But then you got the apologists saying, no, this was a prayer for peace, a tribute, quite touching, kumbaya. Well, blogger Drew Pavlou, I've had him on the show a few times, he's tracked the guy down on social media. We can't find out his name still, but turns out he's from Ireland. And he's a man that doesn't sound to me to have peace and love to all Jews on his mind. For one, he's recited a lovely poem he's done about the Bondi massacre being an Israeli false flag operation.
My focus is on Bondi. It was a real false flag. They weaponise our grief so that they can fly their rag.
And how genuine is his devotion? I mean, he posted an apology for that terrible attempt at a Muslim prayer, but it was an apology not to Jews, but to Muslims.
My skin should be covered more as I pray as a Muslim. I was just after running a race. I just walked up to the monument and it just felt right at the time. So I'm really sorry if any Muslim is looking at this and is horrified by the way I'm praying. I'm not pointing in the right direction either.
Shorts on pointing in the wrong direction. Anyway, joining me is Rowan Dean, Editor-in-Chief of The Spectator Australia, host of Outsiders every Sunday at 9 a.m. and host of his own show on Fridays at 7 p.m. Busy guy. Rowan, this Irish chap in Australia, I mean, it makes you wonder how we let such people in.
Well, I don't know about the particular individual, but he seemed more concerned about having upset Muslims through his stunt or his genuine prayer than upsetting the people who were probably most upset by it, which of course were Jewish Australians. To be at Bondi wearing Free Palestine gear is in itself pretty offensive to a lot of people, I would have thought. The Bondi massacre was done in the name of Islam. To then sort of pray in front of the memorial, okay, whoever this guy is, whatever he's done, it doesn't strike me that he was either incredibly stupid or he was incredibly provocative, and is taking the mickey out of the rest of us. Okay, that's fine. But the bigger issue, Andrew, is, as you said at the beginning of your show in relationship to something else, imagine if it was reversed. Imagine if a bunch of Christians or Jews turned up at some sacred place for out in Lakemba or wherever, where there's a mosque and there's something or other, it would be deemed outrageous and offensive and all the rest of it. But again, there's a bigger issue than that. And I was thinking about this the other day. We talked a lot in recent weeks about multiculturalism, but we haven't talked much about multi-faith. When I was a kid, my mother was a scriptures teacher, a religion teacher, and she taught, it was in the 70s, and it was, multi-faith was the big issue of the day. And ecumenical movements were keen on bringing people together. And it was a very good movement. It brought Protestants and Catholics together. It brought Jews and Christians together and so on. It brought Buddhists and Muslims. It brought everyone under the same umbrella. But at what point, in the same way that we debate multiculturalism, and at what point does it kind of spill into tribalism? Has multi-faith worked? Has it really worked in Australia? I don't think so. It certainly hasn't worked in Europe, where you see basically Islam becoming a very dominant religion and not really interested in the multi-faith world at all, but rather being a dominant faith.
Well, I think it's no. I've seen it try to cover up go into this cotton wool, fluffy kittens, soft white clouds, green grass, Smarties for everyone kind of vision. All religions are actually the same. We all pray to the same God, but in a different way. Completely false. They are very different religions, sometimes antagonistic. And you mentioned, did it work? I read about a Jewish guy. I think he might have been a rabbi in Melbourne after all this September 11 stuff. And his interfaith group, not one person in it from the Muslim faith rang him to commiserate. Not one. So he wrote a letter somewhere about it. I mean, there you go. But talking about people driven a little extreme by the ideology of the left row, and the ABC, this won't surprise you, has been wowed by a pilot who's given up flying because of the emissions, global warming and all that, saying, I was just looking at the amount of fuel I was ordering for each flight. I got to the point where I just thought, I don't think I can, in clear conscience, amidst the climate situation we're facing, be part of the industry anymore. But Rowan has now turned to baking instead, not seeming to care much. The baking involves ovens, and the bakery that employs him, their ovens burn wood, and lots of it. Why didn't the ABC pick up that point?
Well, the ABC wouldn't understand the irony of that point. The ABC is struggling to, they seem to be struggling to find their feet at the moment, the ABC. But this bloke doesn't seem to understand that him not flying doesn't mean that the aeroplanes won't still be flying, and it's the carbon emissions from the aeroplane, not from the fact that he's the pilot of it, that is something that the climate cult is more concerned with. But I think it also goes to what's really depressing, and we were talking about religion a moment ago, is the way climate-ism is a religion. It's the modern religion. It's all about faith and morality. So my conscience wouldn't let me fly the aeroplane. I mean, it's a ludicrous statement. The arrogance of thinking that the one plane you're flying is somehow going to lead to Armageddon in 50 years' time or whatever. But there is this morality that has been forced down people's throats and into the minds of many, many people who genuinely believe that climate change is an issue, a question of morality. It was Kevin Rudd, that genius, who told us that it was the greatest moral issue of our time. I'm not sure if he still believes that. But it's sad to watch, but the ABC carry on pushing this sort of stuff. They think this is terrific, how wonderful, what a great moral guy this person must be. And it's kind of sad and pathetic, particularly when, you're just discussing with Michael and Cameron, we have people going out of work because of the climate cult. We have huge people losing their jobs, this country de-industrializing itself because of the climate cult, because of this so-called question of morality. How many people have to lose their jobs? How many people have to go without a livelihood? How many businesses have to go bankrupt to satisfy the virtue signaling morality of the climate cult? It seems there's no end to it. And that is the real tragedy of it.
Oh, absolutely. We won't know because for a long, long time, because all the catastrophes still to really break over our heads. But you're right, it's a religion. Same sort of mantra. Repent for the end of the world is nigh. Be good, abstain from sin, bless you. The whole thing. There's just a different form. A pantheism.
Buy your indulgences.
Thank you so much for your time. And buy your carbon credits indeed. Thank you so much, Rowan. After the break, Donald Trump sends journalists off on a decoy plane so he can escape an Iranian plot to kill him. Donald Trump has said 1,000 times he's destroyed Iran militarily. But now we've learned that the president's security officials were so worried by a reported Iranian threat against them at last month's NATO meeting in Turkey, that when he left the country, they first made him go to his new Air Force One, the presidential plane, wave goodbye, shut the door, while the journalists following him around went up the back stairs of the plane. While they were doing that, Trump left the plane by a catering truck underneath it, which then secretly drove him to another plane behind the one you see there. You probably see it just past the wheels over there. Journalists weren't told that they were on what's now being called a decoy plane, while Trump flew ahead of them to Britain and then quietly rejoined them on a third plane. Not that Trump wanted them to think they had been decoys.
It's only up to Secret Service. I just follow what they'd like to do. So I go by Secret Service and the military. They wanted me to go on a different flight, a different plane, equal safety, but They wanted me to do it, so I do it. I do what they say.
What is the nature of the threat?
I guess there was a threat out there. I didn't really ask too much about it. I get a lot of threats.
Joining me, Gemma Tonini, columnist and communications consultant, and Caroline De Russo, commentator and president of the West Australian Liberals. I've got to say, Gemma, it's not a great look for Trump, although I accept that, he's the main man and he's got to follow the advice. But journalists going one way, go and shoot them, and he going the other, not sure.
Well, I mean, the practical reality, Andrew, is that he does have to follow what the Secret Service says and what the military says, and it's bizarre, but also in this current political environment, completely believable and not bizarre. How I would feel if I was a member of the White House press corps and on the so-called decoy flight. I don't know that I'd feel so great about that, because you're essentially just, like flying shark bait in the sky. But the threat must have been present and credible for the decision to take that action to have been made.
I think there have been some questions asked about that. You forgive him, don't you, Caroline?
Well, yes and no. I mean, selfishly, I'd also like to not die in an aeroplane. So I take that view re-Trump, and I can understand if the Secret Service gave him that advice. But I also can't really see if once his plane had taken off, the journos taken off that plane and perhaps put on another so they weren't the flying shark bait, as Gemma put it. So I think that probably could have been done a little better. It could have been done differently, Andrew. But as far as the president not wanting to die and the Secret Service not wanting that on their hands, particularly after the criticism they came after when he was shot before the last election, or there was that attempted assassination attempt before the last election, I can understand why the Secret Service would be being very cautious.
I just see, sorry, with no alert to you beforehand, no warning. I just see the ABC's Ombudsman has apologised herself to Gina Reinhardt for the ABC segment that fantasised about, sodomising her with a stick. Saying, no, I've got to tell you, this is really weird. She says, the Ombudsman, the ABC Ombudsman, we regret that this content didn't meet your expectations.
That's not expectations.
That's not an apology.
That's the boyfriend you break up with.
Trevor, put him back.
Yeah.
That's the boyfriend you break up with, or the girlfriend, as the case may be. But that is the partner that you break up with when they say, I'm really sorry I belted you around the head, but you made me mad. That's not an apology. That is just peak ABC.
That is incredible.
Every single person what is the point of the ABC Ombudsman? Genuinely, what is the point of them if they're coming out with claptrap like that? Let's investigate ourselves. Let's say, we're really sorry that you're upset that we belted you around the head. We're sorry that made you angry. Like, it is not credible. It is not adult. It is not grown up. It is not respectful.
It is not. It's not taking responsibility. I would have thought, Karen, the bare minimum would not be to say, I regret that the content didn't meet your expectations. I would have thought the minimum for the ABC was saying, we're so sorry that content didn't meet our expectations and our obligations, and we are going to have a long, hard look at ourselves because this cannot stand. That's an apology. That was not.
No, that was not an apology. That was absolute twaddle. It's our expectations, in a sense, they're not irrelevant, but they're secondary. What is your obligation? What are you required to do? Yep. And that is all set out in the Charter. It should be saying, we didn't meet the Charter and we apologise. That's could be done in a sentence. And obviously I haven't seen it. You've just raised it now. Look, I'm sure that there is a full page of waffle that goes along with that non-apology. And you can put as much waffle in a statement as you like, Andrew, but it still does not make it an apology for them falling so far below the bar.
It's not an apology. It's I think we're really, really worried and we're wetting our pants about the size of the potential legal bills if we don't try and do something. Like, that's what that is. That is dear God.
Yeah, but if you write that, you write that.
Like
that shows no contrition, right? That adds to the cost. Yeah. Listen,
my learned friend said is
Gemma,
true,
back home. Well, she would know. She would know.
She would know.
I read the most extraordinary opinion piece. Yes, she does. A really amazing opinion piece in the Sydney Morning Herald by a long-term journalism lecturer, Jenna Price, who is furious with the ABC apologising for screening that film about doing, you know what, to Gina Reinhardt with a stick, saying, that's the ABC bowing to the wicked Murdoch media, which means me, you, Caroline. Wonder why News Corp hates the national broadcaster. This is this now retired journalism lecturer. Always about money. The ABC gives away free what news struggles to get people to pay for. Now, Gemma, I've long worried about the hard left bias of so many journalism lecturers. Here again, Jenna Price telling you I don't criticise the ABC for giving away stuff for free. As I have said 100 times at least, I criticise the fact that I'm forced by law to subsidise a national broadcaster hijacked by the left and running a political campaign so often and smears against Conservatives like Gina Reinhardt. Gemma, it scares me that this woman taught journalists for many years.
Well, I had a read of that column when it came through earlier, and I didn't really like it, to each her own, but it was kind of like a whole bunch of word salad to me, like the typical.
Yes, it was.
The stereotypical, News Corp is evil kind of diatribe from the left that has no objectivity, rationality, or even accuracy to it. I mean, like the laughability that News Corp struggles to get people to pay for subscriptions, from what I've read on readily accessible, publicly available media in the paper I write for and many, many others, that is just not the case. My first job, Andrew, was with the ABC in Karratha in 1995. So I'm giving away my age and I couldn't care less. I'm 53 years old. The first story I ever got paid to write was about the Panawanika Dunny Derby. It was small beginnings, but that was in the day where you, as a young journalist, as I was, you aspired to work for the ABC. It was a different organisation. I didn't know really the politics of the people I was working for and with at that time. And I look at it now and I think it has abandoned the fundamental objective and directive for anyone who is a working journalist, and that is to be fair and objective, to report what's happened without fear or favour and objectively. None of this activism. You cannot be an activist and be a journalist at the same time. You cannot. You can go work for a biased paper. You can go work for an industry paper or an organisation.
Well, I don't know.
Do you know what I mean, though? But if you're working for...
I don't want to sound... Yeah, no, I know what you mean, but I don't want to sound ultra-defensive here. But the point is, I think there's an implicit bias or a set of beliefs that informs even a question you ask, the priorities you set on, what you describe, the topics you raise. I think it's implicit. But as long as you're fair, and with the ABC that's particularly so, in that it has this, because it gets money from us all, it must represent us all. So, and by the way, I should be fair to Jenna Price. I worry about the journalism she teaches if that conspiracy theory is a sample of her work. But you must, Caroline, bump across this all the time. They're reporting on the Liberals, given that you are, state president.
Yes, of course, and I mean the Gina Reinhardt example, and as we've just established, there hasn't actually been a proper apology, so I'm not quite sure what she's got her knickers in and not about expectations not being, or whatever the pretend apology was. So I think it's probably a little oversensitive. But, the conversation that we've had on this show in relation to the Japanese Prime Minister, in relation to Kylie Minogue, in relation to a whole bunch of issues, we always know that if it's in relation to a coalition member of Parliament, it is always going to be dealt a much harder blow than the Labor Party. Every time.
Very true. Got to go, ladies. Thank you so much. Always lovely to talk to you. Gemma Tonini, Caroline De Russo, thank you very much. Coming up next, Sherry Markson. Good night.